Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Andrew Glukov with you here as this is our big thing, man. This is the 2021 Gasparilla Bowl preview show. We have got a loaded show for you here. Obviously, we're going to touch on basketball a little bit, but that will be towards the end, folks. You want to get ready for this game. We want to get ready for this game. This is what we're talking about. Okay. So, this is what we got. We're going to break this thing down. We're going to have predictions later on, but this is all bowl time, baby. Here we go. So Elo, Drew, good to see you guys. I'm back in my office for the first time in like 4 months because I can actually handle sitting up, which is great. And here we are, just in time for this bowl game. It's 8-4 UCF against 6-6 Florida. Latest line on DraftKings has UCF as a 7-point underdog on OddsShark. According to OddsShark, 54% of the money is on UCF to cover the 7. 95% of the money is on over the 55.5.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
Kickoff set for 7 p.m. on Thursday at Raymond James. It's going to be packed. They're actually opening up even more seats now for UCF fans, which is pretty cool. I think this thing is going to be a sellout. And as I talked about with Mark Rogers on his show the other day, this is the best bowl matchup outside of the major bowls. I think it is, Eric. And here we are. I mean, but outside of the matchup, you know, what's the plan for UCF? What are the big things that you are going to be following here in this game?
I want to see how, I've talked to Kyle Israel and Trey Neal, which you could read at blackandgoldbanneret.com. The trenches, right? We could talk all fancy about skill position, the trenches. I think we're going to learn about UCF's line of play, line of scrimmage, especially the offensive line and how they match up against an SEC front like Florida. That's going to tell the story in this game because UCF's going to have to run the football, I think, and have balance to win this game, which I think they can. They have the advantage. They're the motivated team. This game means more to them. Florida, this means nothing to Florida. Because what's going to happen is after this game on Friday, it'll be the Billy Napier era in Florida. So to me,
yeah, the second that whistle blows, it's the Billy Napier era.
Correct. So UCF needs this game more, which I'm going to give Drew credit. Drew mentioned this when the bowl matchup came out, right? Drew, this is a game for UCF where you learn a lot about what you have internally, and it's starting in the line of scrimmage against a team like Florida. And I think that's the thing that I'm looking forward to seeing in this matchup.
I got to disagree on the motivation aspect. You have to look at on two fronts. You have to look on the coaching front. You have to look on the player front. You have a new coaching staff coming in. These players are auditioning. They're playing for a potential starting spot in playing time because you've got a whole new set of evaluators. They're going to be sitting there. They're taking notes.
Some of them are.
Well, the ones that are still there, I'm going to say the majority of them are going to stay.
The starting quarterback ain't.
Well, yeah, and
we'll get to that on Emory Jones in a second, but go ahead.
I'm going to say he's probably the most motivated person there, but we'll come to that when Jeff's ready. On the coaching side, I wrote in the storylines, there's two trains of thought here. not all the positions have been hired. There's potential for some coaches to actually be retained. Those coaches, they're going to want to prove their worth. And so you can't mail it in. However, some are already, at least 2 of them have been lined up to be replaced. Their jobs are gone.
Right.
So those are either playing or coaching towards the next job, or they could easily mail that in. However, I think on the whole, Florida's going to be motivated. A lot of these players, they're former teammates of UCF players. They know each other. They played against each other. The last thing they want is the bragging rights that come with it, because it's not like, the Peach Bowl with Auburn. It's a different state. There's no real connections between the teams. The players on both of these sides have personal connections. There's more to this game. It's like when UCF plays USF, and you go beyond just the 2 schools not liking each other. You're looking at the players themselves and the personal relationships. They may be friends in real life, but on the field, they're doing battle against each other. There's room for trash talk and gloating on the line. And the last thing Gator players are going to want is the guys that they know at UCF gloating on them for years, because it's going to be until 2024.
Well, except for those that are going to bail afterwards and get into the portal. I don't think they care.
Well,
I think they're more.
Here's where those guys, I think, are particularly motivated, because we talked about this, and this is where we'll get to Emory Jones, the starting quarterback for Florida this season. It has been reported he will enter the transfer portal, but unusually after the game. All right.
Weird. Yeah.
It's so our thought initially was like, oh, he's not even going to play. No, he is going to play. So he's using this game as an audition for himself, like you were saying, Drew, for whoever else is going to.
Some would argue. Some people are speculating he's auditioning for the opposite sideline. Some would argue.
Well, he flat out said he would play anywhere. So it could be UCF. Absolutely, UCF is looking for a transfer quarterback.
And Gus did say this week in media availability that he recruited Emory Jones, because Emory Jones, I think, was a half hour away from Auburn. So there is familiarity there. So we could, guys, be seeing the next starting quarterback for UCF in 2022 on the field. We just don't know which quarterback.
I mean, obviously we're playing the speculation game, but what we know is true. Emory Jones said after the game he's entering the portal, and he's using this bowl game as a chance for teams to watch him. Remember, all the other games in the regular season were available people. Now they know he's transferring. That's the only game on television. A lot of college teams that are now looking for a quarterback, a transfer, are going to be watching this game very closely. He's going to be very motivated. So,
mind you, he's not just
motivated thing is, I view that as complete bull crap across the board. I was at the Peach Bowl. I talked to Kerryon Johnson. He was extremely motivated. This motivation.
Oh, he might have been. Doesn't mean that. But here's the problem. You guys assume everybody is, and that's not the case. Like, I was at the Cure Bowl. UCF wasn't motivated for that game. They didn't want to be there. Arkansas State was the more motivated and unified motivated team. There's a difference.
Well, there's a difference between personal and team, and you are absolutely right on that. However, that becomes a failure on the coaching staff.
Correct.
To be able to keep your team. If you guys don't want to be there, why are you there?
But these are human nature. These are 18 to 22-year-olds. They're not professionals, and I think we keep forgetting that.
I think you're thinking, Eric, way too much in terms of the fans. Maybe
Let me
tell you something. The thing that I know, listen. I fully admit I've never played a down football in my life, but there's one thing that I know, at having talked to guys who have, is that all these questions of motivation go out the door the second you get hit in the mouth.
Let me ask you this. You think UCF players are just as excited when they play Charleston Southern than they are when they play Florida?
The second they get hit, yeah. I think so.
Big difference.
It doesn't.
Once the game starts.
Into game mode when the game starts.
Yes, but there's a different in motivation. There's a different in energy level. How many times we talked about, boy, that team looked flat. They really looked flat. They didn't look like they were invested. They didn't. That happens. That's human nature.
But you're not talking about motivation. What you're talking about is preparation.
Right, and that's part of
the two.
and that's what shows, and but it kind of bleeds into the game.
Teams can be motivated and unprepared. We see that all the time.
Well, I think you see that.
But I think we have to be clear about what we're talking about. Are we talking about teams that are prepared or motivated?
Here's the bottom line:
preparation, not motivation.
To Eric's defense on this, there are connections between motivation and preparation. A lack of motivation leads to a lack of preparation. However, when the first hit happens, you're not thinking about that. You aren't.
I agree.
The last thing that crosses my mind,
but at that point, it's too late. At that point, it's too late. Right.
I didn't even pay attention to really who was in front of me, other than the fact of there's a guy in front of me, and it's my job to block him. And you kind of. I remember at the end of the East Carolina game, it was asked to Mark Anthony Richards, how did it feel to score the touchdown with the crowd and everything? He goes, to be honest, I didn't even notice. You tune all these other things out. It becomes completely superficial. All this other stuff, the noise, eventually when you're on the field and you're playing, all your focus is on that moment. And all the other stuff is just background noise that you really aren't paying attention to.
And one other thing too, Drew, and I think this also plays into it is sort of like a three-legged stool: preparation, motivation, and talent, right? So if you don't prepare but you're talented, depending on how much talent you have, that can make up for some of that lack of prepreparation, depending upon the opponent that you're playing.
I don't agree with that. I don't think the gap is that big.
But Eric, you brought up the Peach Bowl, right?
Actually, I brought up the Cure Bowl as an example.
The Cure. No, that's right, Drew. You brought up, but let's talk about the Cure Bowl for a second.
I know it's easy. Eric and I get mixed up all the time.
Well, it happens a lot. It happens in
UCF was talented, as we know, but I don't think they were prepared as well as Arkansas State was.
Right, because they didn't give a crap about the game. Period.
I don't think that's fair.
We can sugarcoat it all you want, but they showed it on how they behaved. They didn't show up to any of the functions at the Cure Bowl. They blew it off. They treated like, whatever, we're here, whatever.
Well, I think part of the problem is it was in Orlando. They treated it like a home game.
Exactly.
Without really the home benefits. I think if that game was played anywhere else, that would not have been an issue. I think that specifically was, this would be like Florida playing in Gainesville for a bowl game. In fair comparison.
Don't give them any ideas, please.
Who puts a bowl game in the middle of nowhere?
There's bowl games in Shreveport.
Let's be real here. But the question is, is Florida prepared for this game?
We don't know. That's the mystery.
Are they taking, and is UCF prepared? I think UCF is well prepared for this game personally. But the question, and then the other question is, if they're prepared, are they prepared enough that their talent wins the day? Because let's talk about that. Let's be real. That's an SEC roster. Okay. Well, I don't care that they're 6-6. That's a good football team over there.
Florida, Drew, since the end of the season, so after the Florida State game, has lost a half dozen players to the transfer portal, including their top wide receiver in Jacob Copeland and Muhammad, I think it's pronounced Diabate, who's their leading tackler, have both left through the transfer portal. So while you have talent that comes up, these guys who are coming in aren't starters, and they have to step up. So you're having a talent shift there. So then you have to actually compensate it with more preparation, because now you also have a chemistry issue, because you have to develop the timing. The receivers all have different speeds and different strengths and weaknesses that Emory Jones is going to have to work with. And also the fact that it's only going to be Emory Jones. He's going to be the only guy behind center for Florida. Anthony Richardson obviously out with a knee injury, and I believe he had some surgery done to clean up a meniscus problem, but he's out. So, talent takes a hit. You actually have to compensate it with the preparation. You have motivation, at least in your key players, because think about the guys who are coming in too. Those guys are hungry. They didn't get a chance to start. Now they're a starter and they're there. So they're going to want to do that much more to prove their worth. This is an audition for everybody.
It's an audition on both sides. It's an audition on both sides of the team. I mean, it's not like UCF's the healthiest team in the history of college football either. I mean, they're getting some guys back, but they're also probably, and listening to Gus this week on the presser, it doesn't sound like they're going to get everybody back. In particular, I think Jalen Robinson's out from with all indications that we won't know until kickoff, as we know. But this is, UCF's, Gus mentioned
UCF has played without him for much of the season anyway. So
right,
but that hurts.
Played with him much of the season.
But that hurts.
Any hit hurts. Some hit harder than others. And you look at the players that UCF has lost at the end of the season in the transfer portal. They've lost half a dozen guys themselves. However, none of them were starters. I mean, Dylan Gabriel started. Dylan Gabriel hasn't played since game 3. So none of them were actually starting. So you're losing depth, which hurts on a larger scale, but on a micro scale, which is a singular game, not quite as much. So, Florida's definitely taken a nastier hit on the talent level when it comes to, the transfer portal, at least now. So
Drew,
that'll affect this game.
Drew, I want to ask you about Florida on defense, because I think that's going to be the key matchup here. Is what is UCF's offense able to do? We've had 3 extra weeks of practice. Okay, key, especially with the true freshman quarterback Mikey Keene back there. All right, looking at the rankings right now, Florida, the one weakness I see right now for Florida is their rush defense. They're 71st in the country, 155 yards a game given up. This is a real, or excuse me, no, that's wrong. They are 70th in the country, 153 yards given up. So, and this, by the way, Florida is the number 10 total offense team in the country, despite their 6-6 record. But to me, that if you're going to hit them where they're weakest, that's the weakest point. And if you're Gus, that kind of bodes well for you, doesn't it?
It matches up very favorably. I always talk about you have to be a little concerned when your leading tacklers are defensive backs. Their second and third leading tacklers who are still there are defensive backs. You got Rashad Torrance and Trey Dean. They're both defensive backs, and they're number 2 and number 3 in tackles. That's always a sign of concern. Obviously you had a linebacker and the body as the first guy.
Right.
But, they were all actually very close in tackles. So this actually bodes very well. It means UCF's running game can get to the second level. But then you have to actually shift it back to the offensive line, who has had a lot of struggles this year, more so than expected going into this year. It's a senior laden group. And, there was very high expectations. And while there were dealing with injuries, Matthew Lee missed quite a bit of time, was taking out multiple games at halftime.
Another Louisville casualty, by the way.
Another Louisville casualty that just never quite got back to 100%. And now he's had a chance to rest up. You have Cole Schneider, who's been the Mr. Versatile and has moved into center when he had to cover for it. But this is an offensive line that has struggled at times and has allowed the running game at times where they need it to not get what they, to flounder a bit. And it hurt, lightning type players like a Trillian Coles and a Johnny Richardson, who are not big bruisers, who really don't make their own holes, which is why it's so important that UCF is going to have to establish with Isaiah Bowser and Mark Ante Richards, who are harder hitting running backs who can make their own holes. You're going to have to ride that run. And if the offensive line can't hold it together on the passing game, we saw Mikey Keene was running for his life at the end of the year. And that impacted him badly in the second half against South Florida. 5 completions, 15 yards. But part of the problem was he was constantly running. The protection was Swiss cheese. You can't have that against a team that's way more talented than South Florida in the Gators. So the offensive line, you had a couple weeks to heal up, but they're going to have to play an outstanding game and really tighten up in order to make things happen.
That was. So I'm glad you touched upon Isaiah Bowser. So he is available to play, because I know the last few games it's been an emergency only situation, right? So he's
been practicing.
Gus said this week he should be good to go. Like I said,
okay.
They should get most of it. By the way, I want to throw out. You mentioned the offensive stats for Florida. Throw it out, because the coach that was calling the plays is no longer there, and I think that's something we forget. Dan Mullen's not there, and Dan Mullen's one of the better play callers in college football. That's what he's known for, and that's what makes this very tricky, because this staff, you've only really have one game of film with this current staff for Florida. It was the Florida State game, and Kyle. If you read our article with Kyle Israel, it's one on Q&A. That's one of the concerns he has. There's limited film on Florida with this staff. Now, yes, they've been there all year, and they're probably going to do some same tendencies. However, as we've seen this in the past in bowl games, a lot of times teams will come out with completely different looks that maybe a team hasn't seen on film all year, and that might happen, especially if you're an interim coach. You got nothing to, hey, let's just try some stuff differently for this bowl game, right? Let's try something different. That's kind of the concern I would have.
And that's what happened against South Florida.
Yeah.
On defense, your defensive coordinator gets canned, a week before the game, and you have a dual defensive coordinator system that is able to throw wrinkles, because they knew what was coming with Adam on offense, and they were able to hide what they were doing on defense. And Coach Malzahn flat out said, we had no idea what they were bringing, and they fooled us. We struggled to adapt to it. But the thing is, I've actually heard him say that more than once during the year, and to the point where it's a little concerning, where if the defensive coaches throw a curveball, they struggle to really come around. However, in this particular game, the defensive coaches really haven't changed. Their setup hasn't changed. So at least from UCF's offensive standpoint, they know what they're going into. They're not going to change it, a fundamental change, right at the very end of the year. It's not going to work.
Well, I don't think that it's a concern in terms of Gus's staff in particular. I think that that's one of those things where, your on-field leadership has to kind of take over in that respect. Now, like Trey Neal, Eric, who you spoke to again, remember we had that discussion with him about 2017, and he said that in the championship game against Memphis, the second time around, they were expecting one thing, and they ran a completely different offensive scheme than what they were expecting. So that comes down to your leadership, right? Are your on-field players recognizing those things and saying, hey, this is what they're doing. This is how we're going to have to adjust to this. I think that's where that comes in. So the question is, where does your on-field experience play into that? Because the coaches can't, they got way too much stuff going on as it is. It's the players who have to make those adjustments.
Well, I think it's both. It's both on that, because obviously the players, they see what's in front of them, but the coaches see the bigger picture. There's assistant coaches upstairs watching this stuff, so they can see the formation on a grander scale, but the players can't see. They can only see what's in front of them and what's around them. So they can't see across the field necessarily. And sometimes it can be a little bit difficult in the heat of the moment to convey a lot of information. Usually that happens more after drives, and they get to huddle up and actually talk about things. But it's the coaching staff upstairs that's going to have to recognize these things and communicate down, so that in between drives, they can say, hey, this is what we saw. This is what they're doing. Okay, here's how we're going to change it up. But it comes back to the on-field leadership to execute it and make sure that the other players are executing it.
I come back to that Mike Tyson quote, right, Drew? Everybody's got a game plan until you get punched in the mouth.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like
one of my favorite quotes.
Kind of like motivation. You're not motivated until someone smacks you in the face.
Until you get punched in the mouth.
Well, and it goes back to the quarterback matchup. Emory Jones obviously going to be in the portal after this game, and then you got Mikey Keene, who's the incumbent,
and has something to prove.
Right. I mean, everyone
has something to prove.
Right. Well, people is trying to take his job away, and obviously this will be the last game for the quarterback. Kenny is on the staff; he's going to be a head coach. But I think this is a game for Mikey Keene that you can make a last statement here to your coaches and to the fans. Like, and leave on a good note, because they're probably going to add a quarterback this offseason just because you need one for depth purposes. But the tone will be set based on how he performs this game. And to your point, like, how does he see the Florida defense? What you're saying, Jeff, if Florida gives him different looks, can Mikey Keene figure that out quickly enough? You know, and I think that's going to be some of the keys in this game for both sides. I think Florida is familiar more with what Gus's staff does from their SEC days than I think even Gus's staff is with this Florida staff, because of all the changes that's happened at Florida.
I think as far as Mikey Keene and for next year, I don't think this game really matters all that much. I really don't. Bowl games, remember, bowl games are exhibition games. They really are. That they've always been that way. And outside of basically you're going for a national title, it's an exhibition game. It really doesn't count for anything outside of players get a chance to do something and fans get something to gloat or hang their head in shame about. It's gonna look at what happened with Mackenzie Milton in 2016. I mean, he was terrible at the Cure Bowl, just dreadful. But that didn't. But I mean, you have to use it because it's a great example. Flash forward, he's still the starter going into 2017. It's all about the offseason development in the spring ball. I think spring ball is going to be really where
underrated
because remember, a transfer is going to be in camp for spring. Early
maybe we don't know yet.
Should be. Let me phrase it. Should be. Because at that point, if you don't have a guy in for spring ball and you're expecting to be kind of a veteran presence, it's going to be really difficult to catch up to that. It can happen, but it's difficult. Joey Gatewood came in late,
very late,
but he never played a real big part of the passing offense. He was more of a gimmick player. He was there to run the ball. That's
more
what
wildcat,
he was there for.
Right? Yeah.
And that's not to hit on, to hit on the work that he did, but you knew when he came on the field, he was going to run the ball. His passing never really worked. However, you got Parker Navarro still there. You got Tommy Castellanos coming in, which I'll be honest, I hope he doesn't play more than the redshirt amount.
Oh boy,
I know, but remember, if that's the case, it means that Keene's doing well because you play the best player, or whoever comes in is playing well because you play the best players that give you the chance to win. So I hope that Castellanos does not have to play more than 4 games, because that means someone else is doing better.
Hopefully, at least in theory.
That's far afield right now.
I will point out. While everything you said there is true about Mikey Keene and the bowl game relevance and comparing it to Mackenzie's Akron, the one big difference, Mackenzie, there was expectations for him to play well against Arkansas State, and he didn't, and that's what caused a lot of the negativity, if you will. The difference is, I don't think there's high expectations for Mikey Keene against this Florida defense going into this game. So I actually think it's more nothing to lose for Mikey Keene. If he plays well against Florida, that's a confidence booster for the fan base, for the players, for the staff. Like, hey, he played well against an SEC defense.
That's a fair
point. That gives you confidence. That's the big difference. I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all if he struggles, to your point, because it is about the spring and he's got to improve and all that. But I do think that if he plays well against Florida, that's a positive going into the spring. Carry some of that optimism and and confidence going in.
Absolutely, and absolutely right. And talking to Mikey, I remember hearing him after the South Florida game talking about how the game's slowing down for him. Look at the last 4 games, 0 interceptions. The first half of the season that he played, he threw a pick in every game. He hasn't thrown a pick, in the last
5 games of the season, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Yeah, well, 1 interception. I mean, that says a lot. And that 1 interception, it was a bad one that turned into a gift. But you're gonna have some bad throws every now and then. But each time he's getting better, he's getting smarter. The game's slowing down for him. Normally true freshmen are not meant to be put out on the field. And you saw it with Milton, you saw it here. A lot of them struggle. Even Jeff Godfrey. Godfrey used his athleticism more than anything else to compensate for his youth. He had that athletic ability to overcome some of the youthfulness as a quarterback. Keene and Milton, obviously not as physically athletic as Godfrey was, but that's quarterbacking. It's quarterbacking for you, and you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna grow. Usually, you're not on the field to make those mistakes, but we're seeing growth in real time, and it's you see it each game. Look at the box score, and outside of that second half against USF, where the offensive line, just could not stop the pass rush. And, that hurts his box score numbers, but he could have, he avoided sacks. He avoided interceptions. Yeah, he threw the ball away a lot, but that's what a smarter quarterback does. You have to work with what's given to you. And if you're given nothing, it's better that he caused a punt and allow your defense to make him force a mistake than to create a mistake yourself.
Unless you're pumping 3 and outs out constantly. That's the other thing that you got to try and keep I think that one of the keys here is going to be trying to keep the defense off the field as much as you can. But last thing I want to talk about before we go to break here, one other weak spot I think that UCF can exploit, and this has to do with Travis Williams' defense. Florida turned the ball over an awful lot this year. They were 121st in the country in turnover margin, and they were also a really sloppy team in terms of penalties. 122nd in the country in penalties, 8 per game. UCF on the other side was pretty disciplined with the football. Turnover margin was tied for 29th in the country. So this does feel like one of those things where if you catch a break early, force a turnover, then the ball starts rolling a little bit, Florida starts committing some dumb penalties, the momentum could pick up a little bit. No, Drew?
Absolutely. Something to keep in mind, obviously, defensive backfield was much maligned in 2020. A lot of youth, a lot of inexperience. And it's taken time for them to really buy into and assimilate into the Travis Williams defensive philosophy. But as the season's worn on, the defensive backfield has gotten stronger and stronger. And they, I've read articles written by Florida fans or various writers who are more affiliated with Florida, and they're concerned about the defensive backfield of UCF and the fact of, hey, they've gotten really good. They're pretty good. Devontae Brown has exploded as one of the
Devontae Brown's been so good this year.
Is one of the is a shutdown corner. I mean, he's causing turnovers. He's knocking the ball away, and he's creating all sorts of havoc in the passing lanes. Corey Thornton has been around and is still doing things. I mean, you're seeing players really rise up, and what it came down to is they all said it. T-Will had a defensive philosophy and plan, and it just took them time to really grow into it. And now that they're in full buy-in mode, they've acclimated to it. You're seeing the results. Outside of Cincinnati and SMU, which was different issues. Teams aren't scoring on UCF. They aren't.
Yeah.
They're East Carolina was way below their season average, and they still had a starting quarterback. Obviously, Memphis did not have their starting quarterback. The defense is doing their job, and they're doing their job well. It's 6 of the offense.
Yeah, 6 of UCF's last 8 games, they have held their opponent to 17 points or less.
You should be able to win every one of those games,
right,
if you can hold a team to 17 points.
Right. And they have. In these last.
Sounds like you like the under there. That's
games,
what it sounds like to me.
Interesting.
I'm going with the under. I'm definitely going with the under on that.
All right. So, TV crew, Eric, do we have?
Yeah, it's West Durham, and I believe Rowdy Jones. I want to say is
Roddy Jones.
Yeah, I believe that's the crew there for the.
Unfortunately, UCF does not have the Philpott luck this time around.
No Roy and Kelly this time around. We tried. We really did try. All right, we're going to take a break. Stick around. Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Eric, and Drew once again joining us. Just a couple housekeeping items that we want to keep in mind here. Men's basketball 7-2. We're recording this on Wednesday. So by the time you hear this, they will have likely have played North Alabama 7 p.m. on Wednesday, and then they got 6 days off until Michigan at home. So really excited for that one. Bummer about the cancellation of Florida State, though, Eric Lopez. But COVID once again.
Well, this is going to be a problem in college basketball, I have a feeling, for the next month or two. Plus, it hurts UCF from a resume standpoint. And I know a lot of people are getting caught up in the net rankings this early, but you want to have a Florida State on your resume, even if you don't beat a Florida State.
An ACC team.
Having a quality game, because you look at the American, outside of Houston, the league's been a disappointment. It seems like every team has kind of lost some games that you kind of shake your head. I think the American's like the 8th rated conference right now. So there's not a lot of opportunities in the league to get resume wins. Florida State could have been that for UCF. Now it's all about the Michigan game. And to be honest with you, I think it diminishes the chances of UCF making the NCAA tournament. I think there's a very, very thin room for error for UCF to make the NCAA tournament as a result of losing that Florida State game. It's going to be about that Michigan game. That's going to be huge if they can get that game from a resume standpoint. But Michigan's kind of been up and down as well. It's been a weird year. And then I don't even want to get into the conference play, because will the league stick to what Mike Oresco said in the offseason, that they will not reschedule games, that they will have forfeits like the Big East has been doing if games don't get played because a team has an outbreak?
It's a very questionable thing. You know, Florida State ranked 78th currently in the net rankings. Michigan 37th. UCF sitting in the middle at 49. They needed that. They needed that game against Florida State, just as you said, to help pad that resume. But it all comes out, that Michigan game is going to be huge. You know, you lose that, you're they're not going to really have a top matchup outside of the conference at all. I mean, you know, you've got a couple of good teams in conference, and that's about it. We've always said, and it was always more apparent in college football, but it works really in any college sport. The out of conference is what separates your conference for the other conference. And if your teams and your team, as well as your conference mates, don't win those out of conference games, it hurts everybody. Yeah. You know, come tournament time.
Any chance, Eric, of a reschedule or a replacement opponent?
It's going to be hard, because once you get in, as we get to conference play, it's harder to reschedule games in basketball. And, you know, I was talking to somebody who works in college basketball. The way the schools this year, the way the team's scheduled this year, it was kind of back to normal type of scheduling. It wasn't like last year where there was these big breaks and you can maneuver some things. Now, I do know John Rothstein, who's obviously an insider in college basketball, has reported this week that some conferences are kind of looking over once again their rules there, as far as because there's a lot of controversy over the Big East, for example, and they're forfeiting. Like Seton Hall's forfeited a game. I think they've won a game via forfeit, and that's going to make things complicated from the committee standpoint. How do you evaluate that? Do you give that any credence? Do you not? So
does it count as a loss, or does it count as a no contest or something like that?
Right. And so the problem with UCF is the odds of finding somebody at Florida State's level is very difficult, because you don't just schedule a game for the sake of scheduling it, because you could actually hurt yourself if you play a bad team in the schedule. So I don't know. We haven't, as of this recording, we haven't heard that. We'll see if they can make something up down the road, but it has to be smart scheduling. You don't just schedule a team for the sake of scheduling. It has to help your resume.
Right. And not only that, but, you know, when you get into conference play, right now, the American has 5 teams worse than 100 in the net rankings. In fact, they're close to 200 or worse.
Yeah, that's the concern.
East Carolina at 193, and it goes downhill from there. Temple, Tulsa, Tulane, and then USF at 264. Yeah. So the American has Houston at 5, and then UCF at 49. We're not talking about a strong conference this year from an outside standpoint. And when you don't have these out of conference games, you can't really elevate yourself because you're playing these weak teams. You're supposed to win, and God forbid you lose one. I mean, it takes you way down. UCF has one game against a quad one this year. They're 0-1. That's not going to get you into the NCAA tournament. They're going to have to beat Houston,
and that's why
have to be Cincinnati.
And that's why, and the Memphis. I mean, assuming Memphis figures it out, but that's why the Florida State not playing Florida State hurts, because that could have given you another buffer zone. And you mentioned that, like the South Florida game is a great example. And this is why I disagree with Jeff. Jeff's all about the numbers and this. South Florida, UCF's going to play South Florida. They split almost every year. That's going to be a disaster according to the numbers, because South Florida has a 2-6-2 next to them. It doesn't take to effect that it's a rivalry game. It doesn't take to effect that South Florida gets up for that game. But that kills your resume. That kills your net rankings. And that's the problem. And that's why I can't wait to get to the Big 12, because, yes, the Big 12 is a lot stronger than the American. But in the Big 12, you're not going to have this problem.
Let me list real quick the top 5 in the Big 12. Yep. Baylor at 2, Kansas at 6, Iowa State at 15, Texas at 21, and Texas Tech at 29. So Texas is out, but you had Oklahoma and West Virginia who are at 41 and 45. Boom, you've got over half.
Throw Oklahoma out too, by the way.
Yeah, you got half a dozen teams that are going to be there when you get there that are in the top 50 in the RPI. I mean, you actually look at the entire Big 12, you know the lowest ranked team is? Kansas State at 87 is the lowest ranked Big 12 team.
That's a big difference. Wow. That's the big difference.
Legit basketball conference. And aside from that, UCF's got to really work themselves up to that level, which is a whole different topic for another day. Just from a fan standpoint, look what you're looking forward to. I mean, that's a trial by fire every year.
It is, but you have more room for error as a result, whereas you don't in the American. You just read it off, Drew, the numbers. If UCF loses to a South Florida,
forget about it. It's over.
They're in big trouble. That's why there's no room for error, and that's unfortunate. That's why, unfortunately, I think this Florida State game could be the difference between an NCAA tournament team and an NIT team. It could be that significant.
All right, so we're going to be, obviously the North Alabama game. Got to win that one. Tune up, ready for Michigan on the 30th. I want to hop over to the women's side real quick, too, because big game at Iowa this past Saturday. They come a little bit short of 69-61. It was a tough game. That's number 14 Iowa. Homecoming for Coach Abe, who played at Iowa for a period of time. UCF, kind of kept pace with the Hawkeyes there for a little bit. It was tied at halftime, but Iowa's outscored UCF 25-12 in the third to get the W. Tay Sanders had a nice game. She was 8 of 20 from the field, 20 points, 3 rebounds. Diamond Battles was only 3 of 11 from the field, but 12 points, 3 assists, and 4 steals. 5 steals for Alicia Lewis, 4 of 9 shooting. She had 10 points on the day, but Iowa's a good basketball team, and they were playing at home. Eric, but this is one of those things where I think you had the key number there, where UCF is undefeated when they out rebound. Is it when they out rebound opponents? UCF is undefeated when they get out rebounded. They're 0-2.
Well, so they're 7. They're 7-0 when they out rebound their opponent. They're 1-2 now when they get out.
1-2 when they get out. Okay, you're right.
And the win was against Idaho State. So take that for whatever it's worth.
That was weird.
And they got out rebounded by Iowa, even though Iowa was the smaller team going in, and UCF actually got outscored in the points in the paint. In fact, they were held to a season low, 16 points in the paint. They're 8-0 when they outscore their opponents in the paint.
That was the number.
They're 0-2 when they get outscored on the paint. Monica Cinato, the starting center for Iowa, scored 19 points. She outscored Masini Kaba and Destiny Thomas combined, 19-11. Caitlin Clark, who's the star player for Iowa, she had a strong game. But I thought UCF actually did a good job making her earn what she got from a point standpoint. She didn't shoot the ball well from the field, but They didn't win the battle in the paint, and that's the key. This team has to win the battle in the paint. That's what their identity is. They're not going to outscore you from the perimeter more times than not. So tough loss. Didn't help that Iowa somehow lost to IUPUI this week on a buzzer beater.
God, what in the world was that? Holy smokes.
They blew an 18-point lead in the fourth quarter, so that has to be a little extra frustrating. But the good news for UCF, they're 2-1 on this road trip. They have a win at home against Arkansas. That's their marquee win to this point. And I think all things are considered are very positive. Tay Sanders, you mentioned 20 points in the game. She's averaged 14 points in her last 4 games, only averaged 8 in her previous 6 games. She's becoming a consistent scorer alongside Diamond Battle. So UCF quietly now has a 1-2 punch offensively. That's a big positive as they get into conference play here in the new year.
Well, not only that, but they're ranked 36th in the net. And as they're getting into conference play, same issue as the men's to a lesser extent about the strength of the league, not quite as bad on the bottom. But I mean, you have a lot of teams in the mid 100s. UCF does get South Florida twice, who is currently highest ranked team in the conference, which, you sweep that goes a long way. But I think the women are much better set up than the men at being able to make a chance at attorney at large.
Agreed 100%.
Yeah, one of those that goes a long way, by the way.
Yeah,
agreed.
Exactly.
Agreed 100%. The other thing, by the way, remember the women's tournament this year has expanded now to 68. It's not 64. And that is significant because remember, UCF, the 2 times they've been in the tournament under Coach Abe, they've been one of the last 4 teams in. So a little more breathing room for them to get in. Although if they're one of the last 4 in now, they might be in the playing game. But we'll worry about that down the road.
The key is to get in, and then your destiny is your own.
So next game is against Princeton, which is up in New Jersey on December the 29th, actually a week from when we're recording this. And then it's conference play time. Go ahead, Drew. You said you want to say something.
Oh yeah, that Princeton game is bigger than people think, because you think it's Princeton. Yeah, Ivy League team. They're 7-3. They're ranked 40th in the net. That's a top. That's a quad 1 game. So that's an important game coming up. Probably the most important one outside of USF at this point. For the remainder of the year, just because of the way the conference is shaped up to be at this point.
And so it's gonna get a little higher too, because Princeton plays number 12 Texas Wednesday, December 22nd, the night we're recording this. So, and that's at home for them. So if they show out well in that game, even if they win that game, boy, that's gonna set this game up to be really big for UCF. So we'll keep an eye on Coach Abe's team as they move forward. All right. Let's wrap by going back to the bowl game here real quick, and it's going to be prediction time. So once again, the latest line has UCF as a 7-point underdog, according to DraftKings, our compatriots at DraftKings on SB Nation, over under 55.5. What's the boy? It's the consensus seems to be UCF loses but covers. Just looking at this objectively, guys, what do you and Drew, I want to start with you. Not so much the score prediction, but how do you predict the game is going to play out?
Well, I'm going to go with the assumption that Isaiah Bowser plays and is about as close to 100% as he's probably ever going to be this season. They're going to live and die with the running game. That's just what UCF's strength is right now. Obviously, that wasn't what it was meant to be, but it's what it turned into. And you're going to run with that. With Florida's struggle against the run game, UCF's offense is not going to score quickly, but they're going to move the ball. And, are they going to finish drives? Not necessarily, but they're going to at least get close. And I think they're going to at least start getting points on the board. Despite the kicking struggles of Daniel Obarski from anything more than 35 yards out, I think he's going to get opportunities closer up. And UCF's going to keep this close. I'm not sold on Florida getting past the losses of a couple of their team leaders. As I said, it's never a good thing when your defensive backs are leading your team in tackles, and now they're number two. You're basically moving up from 2 and 3 to 1 and 2. I've taken the under. Could UCF win? Absolutely. I think they're probably going to fall just a little bit short because there's going to be a mistake somewhere. When you have these very close margins, you can't afford a mistake. Emory Jones is playing for his career at this point, so he's going to leave no stone unturned on just using.
Probably going to see him try and really make a lot of plays. Maybe that could go either way too. He might try to do too much. I
always say you don't want a hero. You don't need a hero. Heroes screw up. You want blue collar guys who just get the job done. But Emory Jones is really athletic. He's more of an athlete than a quarterback, than a pure quarterback. And UCF has struggled against guys who can tuck the ball and run as a quarterback. I mean, it's a long history of that. Let's see. He has almost 700 rushing yards on the season. That's going to play into his advantage because UCF just doesn't do well against dual threat quarterbacks. I think Florida's still going to hold on, but I'm thinking more like a 24-21 or a 27-24. We're not looking at a shootout by any stretch, but I think UCF is going to keep it close.
All right, Eric.
Red zone defense, turnovers. How both teams do in that will go a long way in this game. I think you're going to be at a premium in this position. I do like the under, even though that's dangerous. Bowl games tend to go over for whatever reason. Teams, either defenses just decide to take the bowl game off, whatever. That said, Emory Jones, dual threat quarterback, how UCF handles that's going to be interesting. Could Emory Jones protect the football? Big question. I'm taking UCF to win this game by a touchdown, 24-17.
Ooh, okay. I think the key number here is going to be which team gets more than one turnover first. All right. We're probably going to see, because it's a bowl game, we're going to see a little bit of sloppiness. I do think we do see that, right?
If you find a prop bet where the combined penalties in this game is like over 10, take it, because this will be it'll be a slop fest.
I gotta say, if you could go with third down conversions that it's under 50%, take it.
My thing is going to be whichever team gets more than one turnover is going to win the game. I really do think that, and especially if it happens early. And I'll tell you the truth, I think that the star of the game could be UCF's defense once again. I really think that. Everyone's going to have their eyes on Emory Jones, and rightfully so. Like we said, he's basically auditioning for his next quarterback job, but he could try to do a little bit too much here. Can UCF bait him into thinking some things are there that aren't, and get a couple turnovers and then shorten the field for UCF's running game and Mikey Keene? And then can UCF also, when they get the ball, keep their defense off the field, maybe control the time of possession a little bit more? It's a big game for, like you said, Eric, big game for UCF's offensive line. Time to show up against a big time opponent. So I like UCF in a close one.
My key player is Tatum Bethune. He's going to have to play lights out, and he's going to have to be able to pursue because Emory Jones is going to tuck it and run. He's going to. Been doing it all year.
Yeah, and the key is going to be contained.
Yeah,
right?
ever since
Big Cat Bryant, all those guys on the outside.
Trey agrees with that. That's what he said to me.
Outside containment,
yeah.
Yep.
But ever since Bethune came back from his concussion, because he was very critical of himself, saying that he missed a lot of tackles early on and needed to work on it. Since then, he's been a man possessed. Team leader in tackles ever since Bryson Armstrong went down, and he's just been absolutely on fire. I think if he can limit, and if the containment pushes Jones back inside and he makes those tackles, that's going to make it for a very long, hard day for that Gator offense.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what a great matchup. Best matchup outside of the New Year's Day bowl games, don't you guys think?
Well, I think it's the best story. These low and mid, I've always said it since day one. These low and mid tier bowl games, they need a hook, and The Orlando Sentinel reported about how hard Terry Mohajir pushed to get either Florida or Florida State in this game. The game, it sold itself. If Florida State won, it would have been huge. Florida wins, it would have been huge. The bowl game needed this. They needed a big turnout. You don't get big turnouts like this for low and mid-tier ball. This is a pre-Christmas game, which are not viewed favorably. Anything before Christmas is viewed as a low-tier bowl. But you know what? When you actually look at how this buzz is built up, this comes off as a near New Year's Eve bowl as far as the buzz that's generated.
Last question. What are we looking at in terms of a crowd?
Well, they just released a bunch of tickets from organizations that they donated to that didn't take them, or they just didn't use them all. So there are seats available now. It's no longer classified as a sellout. Seats they're cheap. They're like $15 right now in the upper deck. So if you don't have a ticket, you want to go, buy now. They're available.
Time to jump on one right now.
Jump on it. Like a few thousand of them, 3,000 to 5,000 are released. There's still stuff buzzing on the secondary market. I think eventually they'll all sell, because they got another 30 hours left before game time, 31 to be more exact. So expect a sellout as far as tickets sold. I would say real attendance is probably going to be 55 to 58 range. There's going to be some unused seats that just don't go claimed, or people bought them to sell them and couldn't move them, or they overpriced them. I've seen a lot of people trying to overprice the market and try to profit off it, and may or may not work. 60 at the top end out of the 65,000 seat stadium. Hey, that's close enough to a packed house that it's going to be very sparse to find seats in the middle. It's going to look packed. It's going to sound packed. It's going to feel packed. And outside of this will be the biggest game since the Peach Bowl.
What about the breakdown of Florida fans versus UCF fans? How do you see that going?
I originally thought Florida fans would be slightly more. I'm backing off on that one. I think it's going to be closer to 64 to UCF. Now, a lot of Florida fans did buy tickets, especially ones who don't get opportunities to go to games in Gainesville. They're 6-6, but hey, remember,
there are lots of Florida grads in Tampa too.
Well, not only that, but it's a generational thing. Generational teams, that have had football for a long time. You build up this huge fan base. You know how hard it is to get tickets to go to a regular season game in Gainesville? It's not easy. It's not cheap. This is actually a very affordable way to go see your team. So a lot of Gator fans out there, as UCF's working on building up that fan base over time, let's be honest, this is still Florida is the primary school, and it's going to be for a while. Even if their play on the field doesn't reflect that, it's a generational thing. It takes a long time to build this up. So there's a lot of fans out on the west coast of Florida. I live down in the Sarasota, Bradenton area, and there are Gator fans everywhere. In fact, one of my friends who went to Florida Atlantic, but is a diehard Gator fan and season ticket holder, called me and go, "Hey, you want to go to the game?" Before I told him, "No, I'm working at the game."
There you go. You big time them. I like it. You big time.
I like that.
You should have told them, listen, I'm a star on a docuseries, Our Time. I don't need your ticket. I can get
And my name is Eric Lopez.
Eric, I'll ask you, TV ratings for this game, Thursday night primetime, 7 p.m. What do you think?
It's going up against NFL. That's the bad news. You're going up against the Titans and the Niners, so they're going to get crushed by the NFL.
But they're going to get crushed. It's not a divisional matchup. It's the
NFL.
It's weird.
Man.
I know it's the NFL, but it's not like Bucks Bills, right?
People watch NFL, man. That's all we know how to do. That game will draw about 7 to 10 million. I think the UCF game, a lot of it depends on if it's a competitive game or not. I think you're looking at a 1.2 to 1.8 million. I think it'll draw big in Orlando. In fact, that's one of the things I'll be working on in the next week or two.
I was going to say, what do you think the local markets will do?
I think it has a chance
Orlando
to be the most.
I think it'll be huge in Orlando.
It should be the most watched non-New Year's Six bowl game ever in Orlando for a UCF bowl game. And I'll be curious if it draws closer to a New Year's Six bowl game locally. Like locally, the Baylor game's the most watched UCF game ever in Orlando. I think some people might be surprised by that. Some might say, well, wait a minute, the Peach Bowl. No, the Baylor game.
Because more fans were there.
Correct.
Were in Atlanta. They were home.
Correct.
Against when they played against Baylor.
And that game drew locally about a 14 rating. I don't think it'll get to this point in that game, but this will draw a big number locally. Should do well statewide. Nationally, I think it's going to be trickier because, again, I think there's a cap because the NFL, I think, obviously rules television. And if you go up against the NFL, you will get destroyed.
Well, not only that, but we look at it from the story standpoint. The story really matters only to Florida. Once you get out of the state, no one cares.
Birmingham cares. Birmingham.
Well, Birmingham is an exception to every college football rule out there because it is the center of college football, and we don't know why. It just is. We've accepted this as reality.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's the capital of the South in college football. That's what it is.
You're right.
You can't explain it, but you just accept it. It just is. But, outside of maybe a couple little pockets here and there, for the most part, this is just another pre-Christmas bowl game to them. But it's because it's so big in the state of Florida that it's going to make up for that and give you ratings that would rival a game on December 28th, December 30th, and maybe even the 31st.
Boy, I'm excited for this. All right, so what's our plan afterwards? We're going to have night shift afterwards, right?
That's the plan. I'll be on. Yeah, we'll break it down and take questions, comments. It'll be who knows what the temperature will be for that. Obviously, the game will dictate a lot of that. But, we'll have that. And I know, Drew, of special knee-jerk reactions from the Raymond James. I better read a breakdown of the spread, media spread in that.
I forbid that. No one cares.
I was going to say, I don't write about that. We can talk about it later. But, no, that's not... That's not something that I'm not going to put that out there.
This is where I'm going to Bigfoot this as the managing editor of this site. No one cares what we think about the media spread. Okay.
Not only that, but it's kind of like an unwritten rule, man. You don't do that.
No, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
I care. I care about Drew's well-being. I want to make sure he's taken care of and is fed.
Drew's a big boy. He can take care of himself.
I can stand to drop a couple pounds. I'm not obese by any stretch of the imagination, but man, I can stand to lose a little bit of weight.
Drew and Kyle and Noah's going to be shooting photos at the game. They're big boys. They can handle themselves. Okay.
Kyle is the biggest one of us all.
Kyle's an actual former offensive lineman too. I'm not saying you weren't, but
well, I stopped growing. He did.
Yeah.
He's 6'3", I'm 5'9", or 6'2", whatever, somewhere around there. I'm 5'9". I stopped growing.
Anyway, we got lots of stuff on the site. Make sure you take a look at it to preview for the game coming up. We'll have our predictions and previews as well. We will have and we'll be following the game. UCF Banneret _SBN on Twitter. UCF Banneret _SBN on Twitter is who you want to follow for the latest from the Gasparilla Bowl, both leading up to and during the game. Drew is at Statboy Drew. Eric is at Eric Lopez Elo. I am at Jeff _Sharon. Make sure you follow also Kyle Nash at the SOTG for student of the game, the SOTG. And of course, follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And on Instagram as well. We will post some photos up there. Black and Gold Banneret on Instagram as well. And of course, make sure you also follow Bryson Turner for all the latest around the world of UCF sports. It's Bryson Turner on Twitter as well. Night shift following the game. And after that, folks, we are putting a lid on it for the holiday. So we wanted to tell everyone, whatever holiday you celebrate, may it be a joyous and safe and happy one. On behalf of all of us. Or if
you're in my case, you already celebrated it.
Or you already did. Well, we got New Year's Day coming up too. It's you already did celebrate it. See, my wife is Jewish. I was raised Catholic, so we did Hanukkah. We're gonna do Christmas. We always do that. So yeah,
you're opening the door to my off-color joke about my wife is half Jewish, half Catholic. No. She's little with guilt and shame.
Oh God. Please.
You can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it.
Yeah. All right. Well, for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, including Eric and Drew, I'm Jeff. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the game. We will see you on night shift following the game on Thursday night. UCF against Florida, 7 p.m. kick. We will see you then. Enjoy the game, folks. Happy holidays.